So this is an interesting comparison because these two pistols have very similar dimensions, as you can see. They both shoot a .22 caliber projectile, but they are vastly different in just about every other way. Let's take a look. Alright, I'm going to attempt to load 15 and only 15. So this is the ammunition recommended by Kel-Tec, which I didn't have the first time I had the gun out, but I was able to find some. It is the CCI Maxi Mag 40 grain, and it is rated at 1875 feet per second. Alright, so sorry, when you're working with gloves on, you gotta make messes. Alright, and I'm going to do my very bestest, my most bestest, to load this properly. Make sure I'm following instructions, not cause any kind of rim lock. Pushing straight down like you're supposed to. And like I said, I'm only going to do 15 rounds. That's it. If that works out good, I might get ambitious later, but for now, 15 rounds. Because these mags can get hard to load, especially with really cold fingers. So these gloves help a little, but not that much. So I guess first we'll find out, does using the recommended ammo make a difference? Or what? Or just downloading the magazines to half their capacity. So there's 15. That's how I'm going to try it. Now 22 TCM, on the other hand, is essentially just like 9mm. It's actually more like a 5.56, but it loads normally into a 9mm size magazine. Piece of cake. Well, hey, for a change, it is cold and damp. How about that? But the good news is there's supposed to be rain later, and then after that, a lot of wind. Doing what I think is an interesting head-to-head. This one's been on my list for quite a while. This is the Rock Island Armory 1911 chambered in .22 TCM. Talk a little bit more about that in a bit. And the Kel-Tec PMR-30 chambered in .22 Magnum. So they're both shooting a .22 caliber projectile of weights that are comparable and all that, and they're both doing it under high velocity. They're just taking two different approaches. .22 Magnum, of course, is a very long, straight-walled cartridge, and the .22 TCM is a neck-down or bottlenecked cartridge based on, some think the 9mm, but it's actually more of a 5.56 derivative. So think of it as a shortened and bottlenecked 5.56. So the last time we looked at the .22 TCM on the channel, I absolutely loved it. I loved it a whole lot, and this particular pistol is sort of a dual caliber pistol because it came with two barrels and two recoil springs, one for 9mm and one for .22 TCM. They take the exact same magazine because, again, the diameter of the large portion of the case is essentially 9mm in diameter. The gun is heavy because it's an all-steel 1911, and so it's a whole lot of fun to shoot this caliber. Kel-Tec PMR-30, on the other hand, when I had it out here last, which was not that long ago, I had a miserable day. It just gave me all kinds of problems and malfunctions, and the biggest problem was that it just did not want to feed at all. So I was not shooting the recommended ammo, and I have a philosophy about that I won't go too far into today, but I'm not a big fan of any gun that says, yeah, it'll work as long as you use exactly the ammo we tell you to. I'm not about that, sorry. But anyway, I have since been able to obtain some of the elusive recommended ammo that they like from CCI, and so that's what I'm going to shoot today exclusively through this thing. I'm also starting out with loading only 15 rounds in the magazines so that I don't overfill them or you know, get them in there packed in too tight or whatever. I'm hoping that'll make a difference. I am always open to the fact that maybe I was just being a complete screw up the first time I had this out here and I caused some of those problems. That's always a possibility. I don't know, let's find out. I'm going to start out with the 22 TCM. I got a steel target way down range, but I almost always forget something. Every time I'm leaving the house, I've loaded up the truck, I look in my garage, I go, what am I forgetting? What am I forgetting? And today I said those exact words and left the house with no paint. So I can't paint my target, so there's no real point in showing it to you. Let's get started with 22 TCM. Man, that muzzle flash. Yeah, baby. Wow, especially on a cloudy day. Can you see that muzzle flash? We're gonna have to compare muzzle flash between these two guns. So, you know, as I said before, you get this incredibly loud concussion, and you get this immense muzzle flash and virtually no recoil. It's a contradiction of sensory experience. I love it. All right, so that was a magazine of 10. The magazines do hold 10. That was the magazine, I think, that came with the gun. Certainly an advantage of the 22 TCM is that you can go out and buy 1911 9mm magazines. You're good to go. PMR-30, of course, takes proprietary magazines. They hold 30 rounds, but whether they work with 30 rounds is a whole nother story. So here we go. I've got 15 rounds. Let's see how it shoots today. Well, so far so good, huh? Doesn't seem to be quite as much muzzle flash. All right, 15 for 15. And I don't think that was anything I was able to achieve at all when I did the first 100, which I kind of refer to as the worst 100 with this gun. Nice. Go back to the 22 TCM, and I'm going to use the Wilson Combat magazine. I have not yet used the Wilson Combat magazine in this pistol. Certainly not with this caliber. Let's give it a try. 22 TCM. Great sight picture. You've got that Novak style sight, but you've got that nice bright orange sight out front. Two white dots in the rear, but they're nice and close. I like that. Man, there's so much muzzle flash. I love it. Might not be a great home defense weapon just because of the muzzle flash. If it weren't for that, I would say 22 TCM could potentially be an amazing home defense weapon. That muzzle flash might be a bit much, though. Get one shot off and then everybody in the house is blind. All right, back to PMR-30. Second magazine of 15 rounds. 22 Magnum. This gun also has a great sight picture. It's got a green filament out front and two bright orange ones in the back. I think I called them red initially, but they're very orange. It's also virtually no recoil. .22 Magnum is definitely a lot dirtier round, though. I can feel a lot of like powder residue hitting me in the face as I shoot, and it's got this smell, almost like it's burning my hair, which is weird. The smell of burning hair when you're shooting, I don't know. I'm not a fan. Lots of muzzle flash and a loud report. Yeah, they both have plenty of that. But when it comes to the contest of muzzle flash, I looked back through a lot of the video, and I was able to grab a couple of freeze frames. I think we have to declare the .22 TCM the clear winner. Okay, so let's try a little bit of accuracy comparison just to see how I shoot each one of these guns. So keep in mind, I am the weak link in this whole process, and so I may or may not be worth a darn today or whatever. But same shooter, same day, same conditions, same target, all that good stuff. So let's see which one of them I shoot best. I'm going to start out with the .22 TCM. I'm going to do 10 rounds. Then I'll do 10 rounds through the Kel-Tec PMR-30, then back to 10 rounds through the .22 TCM and so forth, for a total of 20. I got two bullseyes on that target downrange at 20 yards from where I'm standing. So let's see how I can do. Go for the top target with the .22 TCM. Okay. PMR-30. Also 10 rounds. That's all I loaded in the mag. 10 rounds. Go down to the lower target. I feel like I have a better sight picture with this gun, with the PMR-30. I don't know why. It just feels like I'm seeing the target and seeing my sights a little bit better. Back to .22 TCM. And back now to PMR-30. Definitely a nice sight picture. It's a lot easier to hold this gun for slow, concentrated fire because it's so light. That's for sure. I don't know. I can't see anything from this distance. Let's go down and take a look at the targets. Let's go have a look. All right, so up top was the .22 TCM. Most of my group's not too bad. Looks like I had a few high. And we will certainly blame the shooter on that. And then down here, PMR-30. Looks like similar size group. Had a tendency to go to the right a little bit more on that one. That's interesting. But I don't know, if you threw out those couple of flyers way up here, very similar size groups. But I'll measure them. You can see from the grids, from the 1-inch grids. Not bad. 20 yards offhand. With these old eyes, I'll take it. course, the first thing they have in common is that they both have the same size hole in the front of the barrel, and they shoot the same size projectile. Hole in the back of the barrel, or the chamber end, is quite different. Talk more about that in a bit. But if you look at them and you look at the numbers, you can see that, yeah, on the surface they do look very similar. Basically the same overall length, they have roughly the same height, they're even about the same width. Most of the just overall aesthetics of the two guns make them look like they're pretty similar. But they have some very key differences as well, starting with the weight. Rock Island Armory TCM is a full steel 1911, and even goes beyond most 1911s in that it has a full tactical dust cover with Picatinny rail out front, so it has significant weight. I weighed it at 2 pounds and 13 ounces. Kel-Tec PMR-30 is almost all polymer, with the exception of a portion of the slide and some of the internal parts. This is an all-plastic gun. It weighs, they say it weighs 14 ounces. I weighed it at 15.5. Either way, it's pretty light. That puts the TCM at just about 3 times the weight. It's also just about twice the price. So that's another very significant number, obviously. If you're just looking for a range toy to have a little bit of fun with, you know, an MSRP approaching $900 might make you really stop and think, whereas something under $500 is going to be a little less painful to consider. They both have very good sights. I like the sights on the 22 TCM because it's got that sort of blacked out rear and fiber optic front that I really like. I also like the sights on the PMR-30 because you have that nice green high-vis sight out front with the contrasting orange filaments on the rear. I'd have to say overall I enjoyed shooting the PMR-30 better in terms of the sight picture. They are both made of steel where appropriate. Where appropriate for the TCM is just about everywhere. Where appropriate for the Kel-Tec PMR-30 is just part of the slide, really. But they're not stainless steel. They are carbon steel. 22 TCM is parkerized. I was not able to find out information on the type of finish applied to the Kel-Tec. Oh, the capacity number looks like it's another big distinguishing separator between the two. Rock Island Armory 22 TCM holds 10 rounds in a single stack 1911 9mm sized magazine. And the Kel-Tec PMR-30 says, look, I hold 30 rounds. And yeah, if you've got the patience and the thumb strength and all of that, you can cram 30 rounds into the magazine. It is not easy. Those last 10 are particularly painful. But even beyond that, if you put 30 rounds in that magazine, expect to be doing a lot of malfunction drills, a whole lot of malfunction drills. I have found, from my experience with this gun, practical capacity is about 15. Suddenly, not such a big difference. Both have very nice trigger pulls. 1911, of course, has a 1911 style trigger pull, and it feels good. It's very crisp, and I've measured it consistently right in the 4.5 pound area. Kel-Tec PMR-30 trigger is breaking, according to my gauge, right at 4 pounds, and it's very nice. Just an Opinion grip index is in favor of the Kel-Tec, which is interesting because if you look at how deep the grip is here versus here, it's much shallower. However, you can see how much thinner the Kel-Tec PMR-30 is, and that's really why I developed this formula that I call the Just an Opinion grip index, because your hand still has to wrap around the thickness, even though one distance might be shorter than the other. So taking that into account, Just an Opinion grip index actually is 2.97 for the Kel-Tec and 3.45 for the Rock Island. Okay, since I had good success loading 15 rounds in the two magazines and did not have any malfunctions or problems, I'm going to get a little frisky. I put 20 rounds in this magazine. I will tell you, there's a big difference. That 5, just going between 15 and 20, got a lot tougher. So when you get trying to put 30 rounds in these magazines, it's painful. So yeah, they might hold 30. They might be designed for 30. But from a practical standpoint, maybe because of malfunctions, but certainly even just loading them, you just want to stick with 15 to 20 maybe. All right, so 20 rounds in the PMR-30. Let's see how it functions. This gun is just super, super light. Kind of a weak ejection, wasn't it? And there we go. All right, so 15 rounds gave us 2 magazines full with no problem at all. First time I tried 20 rounds, not so good. So I'm going to assume that we probably just did not feed. Oh man, we got a hell of a dimple in that case. Yep. No round in the chamber, so it just did not want to feed. And it is not rim locked. I'm looking at that right now. All right, let's try it again. See if it'll feed it. Can't really tell. Yep, it did. So, I don't know. Let's see what happens. Nope. So, I'm thinking this is a 15 round gun. I'm going to go with that. Again, did not chamber. So what have we shot? 2? I'm trying to keep track. Okay, that one ejected the case forward. That's an interesting. All right, there we go. Maybe now we're on a roll. Very nice. My steel target's about 25 yards downrange, and it is ringing it very nicely. Very nicely. So my advice to me, to you if you care, load 15 rounds in the magazines, go with that. All right, back to the 22 TCM. We'll take a look at the numbers in a bit, but this gun I'm thinking weighs probably twice as much as the PMR-30. I think Rock Island Armory does now actually offer a polymer framed handgun chambered in 22 TCM. I've not had an opportunity to check one out. I would love to. I would love to see what it feels like in a much lighter gun. Man, it's loud, even with my hearing protection. Big difference. Like I say, it's like a sensory contradiction. It's enormous volume. It's really, really loud, and incredible muzzle flash, and no recoil. So all the fun stuff and none of the bad stuff. That's what I love about it. Okay, I measured both of these groups just roughly with a ruler. I didn't get too technical. The 22 TCM that you see up on top of the target measured a total of about 5 inches, and that includes this high flyer and the one next to it all the way down to here. So that's a 5-inch group If I took away those two flyers, it's more like a 3-inch, but hey, it is what it is, right? I did notice a decent concentration in this area, but still, at 20 yards, not quite what I would expect if I was going to talk about good accuracy. But that's kind of what I've seen with that particular round in the past. Now moving down to the PMR-30, it measured a total of a 4-inch group, so it's a little bit better in terms of its all-around group size, but the pattern is, I don't know, it almost looks like a shot pattern. It's just no real, there's no real focus, like, you know, here's where your main hits were. They were all sort of up to the 1 or 2 o'clock trend on the target, but I don't know, pretty even spread. So there you go. Neither one of these guns, I think, is really going to be a tack driver, but they're both good fun. So basically these two guns take two different approaches to putting a .22 caliber projectile of pretty low weight, like 40 grains or so, downrange at an incredibly high speed with a okay degree of accuracy, but mostly just for great plinking fun. They take two different approaches at it. The folks at Kel-Tec said, well, there's already a .22 Magnum, let's use that. Advantages there are that ammunition is commercially available in various configurations from several manufacturers, even though the folks at Kel-Tec seem to want you to use just one specific variant of that, which I don't agree with. The folks at Rock Island Armory said, you know what, let's invent our own. Let's go wildcat. So you've got what looks like a 9mm neck down to a .22. And that's their approach. That allows you to put a whole lot of propellant underneath that little projectile and launch it, which is exactly what it does. That is essentially two different ways to achieve the same kind of concept. Personally, I think Rock Island Armory did it better. Now, where I will pick a clear winner is reliability. As much fun as the PMR-30 can be to shoot, the only thing you can really rely on is that it's going to malfunction. The .22 Magnum cartridge was developed for rifles and revolvers. It's just not well suited for a magazine-fed semi-automatic pistol. So I give Kel-Tec credit for trying, but it falls short. The best chance for success is to limit the magazines to 15 rounds. This seems to produce the best and most reliable results. The Rock Island Armory .22 CCM, on the other hand, has been 100% reliable every time I've shot it. It's never malfunctioned. It can also be changed over to a 9mm in just seconds, but that's a different topic that I've covered previously in a full review of the gun. I don't usually pick winners in a head-to-head video. I really just like to compare them and let you decide. But in this case, even though one is twice as expensive and 3 times as heavy, I will take the Rock Island Armory .22 TCM every single time. The PMR-30 is equal parts fun and frustration, and I just don't have that kind of time. Okay, just a quick word in the way of disclaimer. I bought both of these guns, however, the Rock Island Armory TCM 22 did originally come to me as a T&E product, but after I did my first review with it, I liked it so much, I sent them a check instead of returning the gun. And this one I bought over the counter. So I do own both of these guns. They're both bought and paid for, but if getting this one initially as a T&E you think makes me like it better, then you are now armed with that information. You can make that choice. I want to thank, as always, all of my Patreon supporters. You guys rock. I appreciate your help in being able to continue to put out quality content. Thank you very much.